Hello, Bible scholars. It is so good to just be back with you. We are making our way through the book of Genesis, and today we are starting in Genesis chapter 8. This is Bible study number 15. And we are getting ready to see what happens while Noah's on the ark and how he's going to test things to see whether or not he's able to come off of the ark. I think we're going to see it in a different way than the way that we may have even read or even been taught. But just like every other Bible study, we are in for a journey. So grab your Bible, grab a pen, grab some paper, grab your favorite coffee, your water, your tea, whatever it is, and let's get ready to Bible. Yes, y'all, Bible scholars. So good to just see you here. Listen, I'm letting you know right now, I very well may cough. I'm feeling a little bit under the weather, but God is just going to be glorified. I thank God for my mom. Listen, it's something about those mothers. They will make you. They'll make you hold fast and stay consistent. Because I said to my mom, I was like, I'm not feeling the greatest. And she said, but this is an assignment God gave you. And I'm like, okay. Okay. And so I said, well, I'm going to sleep on it and I'll see how I feel in the morning. But I woke up this morning and I said, Lord, she's right. This is an assignment that you gave me. And so, y'all, let's get ready to Bible. I want to say good morning to Jeannie. Good morning to you. Good morning to Bishop Spencer. Good morning to you, Jennifer, all the way in the Mississippi. Good morning to you, Alicia. As always, it's so good for everybody, for everyone to just gather and for us to be here. Listen, sometimes we forget the power of fellowship. And the Bible tells us that it is good to fellowship. And what an honor to be able to fellowship with you every single day. Now, for those that this may be your first time, or maybe you just forgot, I go live Monday through Friday at 7:30 a.m. anti-meridian. I just feel smart when I say that. Anti-meridian, post-meridian. I feel very smart when I say those things. I also like saying the word thrice. So anytime I get a chance to say it, I'm going to say it. And I'm just letting you guys know that right now. Listen, if you have not visited our website, go ahead and do that. So if you find yourself where you're like, man, I feel like I'm behind. First of all, I don't think you're ever behind on studying the Bible. I don't think that you're ever behind. Make sure that you stay with us. It's okay for you to continue to be with us live while you're catching up on the studies in your free time. I'm in the process of developing study notebooks and journals. So for those of you who are like me, you love to write in a journal, you like to draw and all those different things. I'm in the process of creating something that's just for us to be able to do that. I want to say good morning to you, Lisa. How are you? Thank you so much. And I probably shouldn't have even talked about the fact that I don't feel very well. So y'all forgive me for that. I just kind of wanted to give you that disclaimer in case I cough because that's not very cute. Hi, Miss Sharon. How are you? Good to see you. So today we are going to dive into Genesis chapter 8. I was very ambitious and I thought that I was going to be able to get through the entire chapter today. I'm not. I don't want to rush through God's promise. The promise that he made, the covenant that he makes with Noah as they get off of the ark. And so I'm like, what are we rushing for? We will finish out Genesis chapter 8 in our next study. But today, I think that we're still going to get some really good meat, some really great, interesting things as we are seeing what happens after they have been on the ark. Now, when we finished in Genesis chapter 7, verse 24. And what we read is the fact that they were on, and the waters prevailed. The waters prevailed upon the earth 150 days. So in Genesis chapter 7, we see when the flood starts. If you remember, Moses, why do I keep calling him Moses? Noah, it's the O. Noah was 600 years old. Okay. He was 600 years old. It was the second month. and it was the 17th day of the second month of that year. Now, these things are interesting. They're important to keep in mind because the Bible really does give us insight into how long they found themselves on the ark. I'm going to do my best to try to talk about that and to be able to bring that out. If I'm not able to fully bring it out on today, I'll make sure to bring it out with our next Bible study. So again, in our last study, we have gone through the flood and now it's 150 days. And so this is where we're starting in Genesis chapter 8. Okay. And so here we go. And it says, and God remembered Noah and every living thing and all the cattle that was with him in the ark. And God made a wind to pass over the earth and the waters assuaged. Okay. Let's begin to break this down. And God remembered Noah. Now, somebody might look at that and be like, okay, so what? Did God forget him and these animals that are on the ark? No, he didn't. This really is a figure of speech. God never forgot Noah and the animals. But when we see, and God remembered Noah, we see this type of phrase often in the Bible, especially in the Old Testament. We see it with, for example, with Hannah. When she was wanting to give birth and she could not give birth, it says in 1 Samuel, and God remembered her. So what this does is it lets us know that God is going to move supernaturally. He's going to take special action on behalf of whatever person or group of people that he's referring to. So no, it doesn't mean that he forgot them, that God was just off godding somewhere else. No, it means that, okay, I'm letting you know right now as you're reading this that God is about to do something special for this person or group of people. And in this case, God remembered Noah. He remembered his family. He remembered all of the animals, everything that was on the ark. He remembers them, and he is going to move specially on his behalf. Now, how does God begin to move? Well, it gives us some insight here. It says, and God made a wind to pass over the earth. So what does this mean? God made a wind to pass over the earth. God supernaturally moves on the waters and he sends wind. And y'all, I got so excited. I got so excited because I said, well, Lord, is this a wind from the heaven? Right? So I went to Blue Letter Bible. I went to the concordance. Y'all, wind in this scripture, in this verse, it's ruach. Wind of heaven. Oh my God. So we see this supernatural move of God, and it tells us in the scripture. This is why, if you're like, why does she study the way that she does? Listen, we miss the details. I was about to say we forget. We just don't know them. We miss details when we don't go deep. We got to go deep. So the ruach, the wind of heaven, God makes a wind. He sends a wind from heaven to pass over the earth. My God. And then it says, and the waters assuaged. Now, however you say it, I think it's assuaged. That's what I'm saying today. It's also spelled with a W. And in the Hebrew or the Greek, it's shakach. Now, I don't understand why I could say that better than I could say, I guess, what is an English word, but it just is what it is. And what this means, it means to make cease, to pacify, to set. So the waters finally chill out, right? So we know that before this, we have this canopy, this firmament that was surrounding the earth. Shauna, hello to you, Ashley here. So good to see you here as well. So this canopy that was surrounding the earth, we learned on yesterday that there was the flood that broke from the deep. So there was water springing up from the ground. There's water that's coming down from the sky, which we know to be rain. And all of this stuff is happening really, really fast. And we know that there is a continual rain. There's a continual flooding that is for a full 40 days and 40 nights. We learn this. And then it says, but after then they're floating on the water another, 110 days. Right? So it's 150 days now. Now, while they're floating on this water, I would imagine, because this tells us that the waters shakach, that they ceased, that they set, that they were pacified. I would imagine it means that even though it's not raining, that there's a lot of waves that are, maybe the ark is being tossed to and fro. They still understand that there is something that is happening outside of this ark. And so God has to remember him. God says, okay, I'm going to move supernaturally. I'm going to send a wind from heaven that is going to pacify. Woo, my God. Remember when Jesus said to the waters, peace be still. He spoke to the water, peace be still. So this wind comes from heaven and the waters are pacified and they cease. They chill out. Get yourself together. Sit your neck down, right? The waters chill out. Genesis 8:2. The fountains also of the deep and the windows of heaven were stopped, and the rain from heaven was restrained. So this is just letting us know, listen, at this point, we don't have rain coming down. We don't have the fountains from the deep springing up. Everything has ceased. Everything has now been restrained. It is in a holding pattern. Okay? It is in a holding pattern. Genesis 8:3. 1 second, I'm sorry. Okay, I'm muted for a second. Genesis 8:3. And the waters returned from the earth continually. And after the end of the 150 days, the waters were abated. So again, 8:2 and Genesis 8:3 is it's reiterating what happens. The water is no longer rising up. The heavens are no longer raining down. Everything has been restrained. And now we're hearing that the water from the earth, that it's returning. It's been abated, meaning it starts to recede. So it's receding. It's becoming decreased. Now, we understand that it's this wind of heaven or what have you, but Psalms 104 verses 6-9 gives us a really good idea of kind of what this looks like at this time, because we're used to seeing floods, right? We see floods. If you live near, like a riverbank or something like that, we have seen where a body of water will flood if there is a major downpour. And we know if you give it a couple of hours, it's going to recede. If you give it a couple of days, it's going to go back to where it is. But this is a worldwide flood. And we understand, because we read yesterday, that the waters rose to 15 cubits above the highest mountaintop. 15 cubits meaning 22 and a half feet above the highest mountaintop. Now, when we talked about Mount Everest yesterday, we saw that Mount Everest is 29,031 feet high. So let's say if Mount Everest was present at that time, because we don't know, it doesn't say it in the Bible, but if Mount Everest was present at that time, then the waters rose to 22 and a half feet above that. What? So where does all this water go? Where does it recede? Because number one, the water, we saw yesterday, God had put boundaries on the water. He created space between the waters. And now everything has collided and everything is all together. Where is it receding? Psalms 104, 6-9 tells us this. And I'm coming out of the New Living Translation. I think it gives us a nice visual of what this is. So it says, you clothe the earth with floods of water that covered even the mountains. At your command, the water fled. So what do we understand? Number one, we saw that it says in Genesis 8:2 that God sends a wind from heaven. Okay, so he sends a wind from heaven. But this right here, at your command, he spoke to it. At your command, the water fled. At the sound of your thunder, it hurried away. Now, Psalms is a very poetic book. It's such a beautiful book, such beautiful imagery here, but we really can pull out what's happening. Now, we have often seen God depicted in many ways. We've seen him depicted. If you think about Moses, we saw we've read where he's depicted as the thunder. He's depicted in fire, right? So we see where God manifests himself in different ways. So to me, when I'm looking at this, okay, at your command, the waters fell. I believe God spoke to the water the same way that he spoke to it in Genesis 1. And he called things out. He said, listen, I want to see. Listen, water, you're going to go here. Mountains, you're going to come out of here. All of these things. He spoke to it. At your command, the waters fled. At the sound of your thunder. So while this is happening, while this water is receding, this is telling me that this was probably not, it may not have been pleasant. It may not have been a pleasant experience. You're sitting here on this ark. You can't steer it. You've been sitting here now for 150 days, okay? Things stinking. You got these animals in there, all that stuff. You're sick of seeing your family. And then it's possible that you're hearing this thunder and this lightning and all of these things happening. And you don't know what's happening in the midst of what sounds like it's a storm. Because if I hear thunder, I'm feeling like, oh, there's a storm coming, right? So you hear all this stuff is going on, not understanding that God is calling for the flood in your life to recede. Woo! He's calling for the thing that has buried you to recede. You don't understand that. Oh, y'all, listen, we got to catch this thing in the spirit. We don't understand oftentimes that the groanings and the sound, because sometimes life can be so loud, even when it's quiet. The silence of things, the lack of movement in certain things, it just sounds so loud. And we don't understand that God in that moment is calling for a resurrection of life. Woo, my God. So it says, at your command, the water fled. At the sound of your thunder, it hurried away. Let's keep going. Mountains rose. We're starting to see Genesis 1 happening again. Mountains rose and valleys sank to the levels you decreed. So this is letting us know God is restructuring what the earth looks like. It's going to be different than what it was before, because we knew he called for mountains and all of those things, but this is telling us that, mountains are rising at your command. Valleys are sinking to the levels that you decree. So now we're seeing valleys. This is setting. Then you set a firm boundary for the seas. So once again, God is telling the waters where to go and what to do. And it says so that they would never again cover the earth. Woo! Y'all, that's some good stuff. That's some good stuff. That's some good stuff. Look, some of y'all caught that. Jennifer said, glory, God, call it to receive. I'm trying to tell you something. There's some things that I need God to cause to recede. And even the loudest sound of what may feel like anguish to me, it is God calling for things to go into place where they need to go. Oh my goodness. Genesis 8:4. And it says, and the ark rested in the 7th month, on the 17th day of the month, upon the mountains of Ararat. Now, if you remember, the flood began on the 2nd month and the 17th day of that month. So this is telling us that exactly to the day, 5 months later, the 7th month on the 17th day is when the ark rests on the mountains of Ararat. When we look at the word rested, it's nuach, and it literally means to set down. So before, the ark is on the face of the water, but on exactly the 150th day, exactly 5 months after the flooding took place, it boom. It hits something, but you can't see what it is, but it stops moving. It hits something, it rests, it sets down. When it talks about the mountains of Ararat, these are actually known, or we believe that they are the snowy top mountains in the eastern half of Turkey. These mountains are 17,000 feet high. So if we just keep that in mind, 15 cubits above that is 22 and a half feet above that the earth was flooded. My goodness. Okay. And when I was thinking about this, in one way, we would almost think, wow, you gonna put them on top of a mountain? That doesn't really seem ideal. But if God really wanted the ark to be preserved for thousands of years, to be revealed whenever, I don't, and again, there's some people that they claim that they've been able to go up there, they've been able to scrape, remember the pitch, they've scraped tar off of it. Remember, the pitch is what God told Noah to put on the inside and the outside. And tar is found in that region. This oil substance, this petroleum substance, is found in that region. And he told Noah to put it on the inside and the outside of the ark. And it was a means for waterproofing the ark, right? And so it's like, okay, God, if you wanted this ark to be preserved, it makes sense that you would put it high up in this mountaintop. Right now, it's covered by snow now, but it most likely was not covered by snow at that time, right? Jennifer says God was holding it and set it down. Come on here. Okay, let me see here. Ash Shakir says, I think that I recall you saying that Earth was like a greenhouse. Perhaps after the flood is when God caused the polar ice caps to form, turning the extra water into ice. And I would say that you're right. And we are actually going to learn in this chapter where God tells Noah, listen, now there's going to be seasons. Now there's going to be seed time and harvest, right? So that's good thinking, a good thinking cap that you just put on right there. Yep. I think that makes a whole lot of sense, because again, we see where in Psalm 104, one second, where he sets boundaries, and we see where he's commanding the water's fleeing at the sound of the thunder, it's hurrying away. We're seeing that mountains are rising, valleys are sinking. It says, then you set a firm boundary for the seas. What does that look like? You know what I mean? And it's so funny. I was thinking about that today. I said, wow, God, then this must have been, I literally thought this must have been the time that you had ice that this is where glaciers were formed and all of these things. Because if you guys remember from science class, they have said to us that if all of the glaciers were to melt, that we would be covered in water. I don't know. Now, I have heard that the ice age somehow will find this, and we can see this in the Bible. I haven't had time to research that yet, but maybe you guys will want to research that over the weekend. And if that is the case, we're going to come to it in the Bible. But I at least for right now, I am with you. I think that, we don't know how God called all of these things into being. We just know that he did. And so I love when God reveals his word. And if you think about it, if we don't go deep like this, we don't necessarily think about stuff like this, right? Isn't this amazing? And the fact that we are able to relate this to our own life of where we might be right now, only God could breathe life into words that have relevance to us today. Who would have ever thought that the ark would have any type of relevance to us on today? It is really incredible. Genesis 8:5 says, and the waters decreased continually until the 10th month. In the 10th month, on the first day of the month, were the tops of the mountains seen. So when do they rest? They rested on the 7th month, on the 17th day. So they are resting, chilling. They don't know what they're on. Is this a boulder? Is this the top of a tree that didn't get destroyed? Like, what are we resting on? They are literally resting there without seeing anything for another 2.5 months. So after 2.5 months, the waters decrease enough that the tops of the mountains are seen. That's some good stuff. That's some good stuff. Oh my goodness. Okay, let's keep going. And it came to pass at the end of 40 days. So it's been 2.5 months. Now it's another 40 days. And it came to pass at the end of 40 days that Noah opened the window, and window is hatch. If you look for that, the way they describe it is hatch, or a perforated window. They opened the window of the ark, which he had made. Verse 7, and he sent forth a raven, which went forth to and fro until the waters were dried up from off the earth. Now, in the past, I never really thought about why, I never really considered why he would have sent out a raven first. But in thinking about it, ravens are carrion birds. They're scavengers. They eat dead flesh, right? They eat dead flesh. So a raven doesn't, because they eat dead flesh, a raven doesn't have to live low. A raven doesn't have to live in the trees or on the ground like other animals. Scavengers can live up high. They can live up high in the mountaintops because they're feasting on dead things. As long as they can find some dead flesh somewhere they can eat. So as you can imagine, it's a little bit morbid to think about it, but we never really considered, y'all, there might have been bodies that were floating around. Huh? You may have had dead fish, because I mean, fish die. You have these animals. Because how did they disintegrate? Did they turn to dust if they've been sitting in water? We know how when a corpse is inside of water, it will deteriorate, but it doesn't necessarily deteriorate to nothing unless something feasts on it. So you have he sends out a raven, and it would make sense why the raven didn't come back, right? So the raven goes to and fro until the waters are dried up off the earth. Again, the raven doesn't come back. And so what this tells Noah, it tells Noah that the raven has found food. It tells him that it's found food and it's found somewhere to perch itself and to live. But this doesn't tell Noah whether or not trees and plants have started to grow back. It doesn't tell him that. Okay, let's keep going. Also, he sent forth a dove from him to see if the waters were abated from the face of the ground. Verse 9. But the dove found no rest for the sole of her foot, and she returned unto him into the ark, for the waters were on the face of the whole earth. Then he put forth his hand and took her and pulled her into him into the ark. Now, here's the thought. Being a clean bird, doves are not scavengers. So being a clean bird, they're not going to land on something that is dirty. They're not going to land on earth until they can find a suitable dry place for them to land. So the fact that the dove came back, he's like, okay, there's nowhere for her to go. He also knows there's no vegetation. Like there's none of these things are there. Okay. Theologian Charles Spurgeon actually made I thought was a really great spiritual point here. And he spoke to the fact that he looked at the dove finding no resting place, explaining how we as believers, we really cannot find a true resting place here in this world. And so when I saw that, I was like, man, that is really true. I mean, have you ever found yourself where you just do not fit in? You just don't fit in anywhere. You've tried to fit in. Y'all, you ever been out in the world and people are like, why are you here? Aren't you a church girl? Why are you here? Aren't you a church boy? What you doing here? Right? As believers, there's no resting place for us. And so as I was thinking about this, God brought back to my remembrance John 17 and 15, where he says, my prayer, this is Jesus prayed in this book, and his prayers are cataloged here. And so here, this is during the prayer where Jesus is praying for the disciples. And y'all, we are disciples, right? So he says, my prayer is not that you take them out of the world, but that you protect them from the evil one. They are not of the world. This is John 17, 16 and 17. They are not of the world, even as I am not of it. He says, sanctify them by the truth. Your word is truth. So I love this. I love what Charles Spurgeon said, where he makes this point that the dove really represents us as believers in the world, not being able to find a resting place. Our resting place is in God. We have no choice but to rest in God. And so the dove goes out, and catch this. Remember the ark, high five, Holy Spirit. The ark is a life preserver. It's not a boat. It's not a ship that can be steered. It's this life preserver where Noah and his family, everybody, everything in it has been supernaturally imprisoned, supernaturally shut in by God, and God is there with them. If you remember, we talked about that yesterday, where God says, come into the ark. He doesn't say go. He says, come into. That let us know that God was resting right there. So what happens? The dove goes out into the world. He can't find a resting place. He comes right back to the resting place. Woo, he comes back to the life preserver. So for those of us as believers, we're not going to find rest being among the world. That's why we got to be different. And we have to be okay with being different. Genesis 8:10. And he stayed yet other 7 days. And again, he sent forth the dove out of the ark. Okay, we got to pay attention here to the details. Now, I don't know about you. I've often been taught that he sent a raven and he sent a dove. And maybe it was just my assumption, or maybe I was really taught that the dove and the raven went out at the same time, that the raven didn't come back, but the dove came back. No, this just told us these words here, yet other. This means, and he stayed another 7 days. This means that he waited 7 days before he sent the first dove out. It's in the details, y'all. Okay, so this says, and stayed yet other 7 days, and again. So this again tells us now he's sending out, either it's another dove or the dove, whatever it is. He sends out another dove. He sent forth the dove out of the ark. And again, catch that? So he sends out a raven. The raven doesn't come back. He waits 7 days. He sends out a dove. The dove comes back. He waits another 7 days, and then he sends out another dove. Okay? And the dove came into him in the evening, and lo, in her mouth was an olive leaf plucked off. So Noah knew that the waters were abated from the earth. So he knew that the waters had receded from the earth, right? Remember, abated means to recede. So we understand that that the dove came in. Now, y'all, we've been looking at these words of brought, come unto, went in, came in. Y'all, this came in is the same word, bow. Now, for those that are just joining us today, we understand that bow is, it refers to this supernatural phenomenon where God brings the animals and he presents them to, we saw in Genesis 2:19, he presented the animals to Adam, because it says that he brought the animals to Adam. It's the same word that's used in Genesis 6:20, where he said, the animals will come unto you. So we learned that Noah and his family did not have to go out and try to find all of these animals and species and all of that stuff, because they came to him. And then in Genesis 7:9, they went into the ark. And because bow is supernatural, we understand that things that don't make sense are able to happen. They went into the ark. They went to the ark. And we saw yesterday that the animals went into the ark. Noah and his family, they went into the ark on the exact day that the flood started. So they didn't take 7 days to get into the ark. Everything started on the day of the flood. There's no way that these hundreds of thousands of animals and insects and all the things could get into the ark unless God orchestrated a divine move. So this bow is a divine move that God orchestrates, that we've seen so far. I haven't looked anywhere else in the Bible, but that we see so far in the Bible. And so it says, and the dove came into him in the evening. Why is this important? Because the dove found an olive leaf. So that means that there was somewhere for her to abide. There was somewhere for her to dwell. But the Lord sends her back, and then tells the dove to take an olive leaf, so that Noah understands, okay, here, now Noah's like, okay, he understands that the earth is habitable, possibly, right? He understands that vegetation is growing. Okay. Genesis 8:12. And he stayed yet other 7 days, and sent forth the dove, which returned not again unto him anymore. So when the dove doesn't come back, he understands that the earth is habitable again. And at this point, it's 285 days on the earth. Of them in the ark. 285 days at this point. All right, let's look at verse 13. And it came to pass in the 601st year, in the first month, the first day of the month, the waters were dried up off the earth. And Noah removed the covering of the ark and looked, and behold, the face of the ground was dry. So it's almost a full year later. Almost a full year later, and Noah removes the covering. When it talks about Noah removing the covering, it's as if Noah goes up and he lifts up a piece of the roof. This doesn't say he opened up a window. He didn't open up a window. Okay? He didn't open up a window. He takes off a piece of the roof, and he goes up and he looks, and he sees that the earth is dry. But then get this. They have to wait. They wait another 57 days and they don't leave. So let's read this. And in the second month, on the 7th and 27th day of the month, was the earth dried. Okay, let's break this down. What did I do? Sorry, one second. I'm looking at my notes that I have prepared here. Okay. Now, why did Noah, after he goes up, he takes off a piece of the roof, he looks around, and it says he saw that it was dry. The ground was dry. Here's the thing. The dried, when we look at this word dry here, we got to look at what words are. We see this word dried up. You see that? And then we see at the very end, the ground was dry. Well, those are the same exact words. And those words are karab. Hold on. I just realized I didn't copy the full thing. Hold on, let me put this up for you, because I like for you to have my notes. Meaning free from surface water. Why is this important to us? Well, that means that the ground is still muddy, that it's not yet ready. It's not ready for them to be able to step down onto the ground. However, when we go to Genesis 8 and 14, where it says, and in the second month, on the 7th and 27th day of the month, was the earth dried. That word dried is different. Yabashe, which means completely dry. Completely dry. Noah still waits. He waited until God told him to leave. We're going to park here for now. But this is the heat check. Have you ever moved too soon because it looked like the conditions were favorable? This is the heat check. If we remember that the ark was the life preserver, this was a place where change and transition and transformation took place. And I really would imagine, especially when he rips off the roof and he sees that, okay, the ground looks dry. I would imagine that Noah, spoke to God and was like, Lord, listen, like, it's dry now. It's dry. Can I leave? Can I leave? Right? And oftentimes we find ourselves in this space where we're like, okay, but God, this looks favorable to me. It makes sense that I should be able to move forward, right? And sometimes we move too fast. But I believe that God had Noah exactly where he wanted him. He wanted Noah to come to him and talk to him. He wanted Noah to be asking him questions. He probably was okay with Noah even being frustrated. Now, just because we don't read that Noah was frustrated, come on, we're humans. And even though Noah was a righteous man, he was still human. And I'm pretty sure he grew frustrated. You've been locked up with all of these animals, honestly, even with your family, and you love them, but you're over it. And then you get up and you finally get to really take in some fresh air. We don't know what the weather conditions were like at that time, but we see that the ground was dry, so maybe there was sunshine. And you're like, but God, I want to leave. And he waits until God tells him he has to leave. How many of us have had people around us? I would imagine family might have said, well, Dad, it's dry. We need to go. Wifey might have said, babe, listen, I'm sick of you now. You've been farting in the middle of the night. I just need to get out of our cabin. Okay? I'm a little bit over it, right? But how many of us have had people that are around us that they see conditions are favorable, and you know that God has not given you the unction to move yet. He has not told you to move yet. Well, that means you got to wait. You need to wait. God has us right where he wants us when we're coming to him constantly. How do we know this? One of my favorite verses is Philippians 4, 6, and 7. And in the King James, it says, be careful for nothing. We often read it as be anxious for nothing. In other translations, be careful for nothing. But in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known unto God. And then what happens? And the peace of God, which passeth all understanding, shall keep your hearts and your minds through Christ Jesus. As long as you are praying and you are laying before the Lord, for some reason, you're just going to have a peace. It didn't say that you wouldn't be frustrated, but when you take it to God, some kind of way, he gives you a peace about a thing. He gives you a peace about a thing, and it helps you to stay your heart. It helps you to bring your heart and your mind under subjection. I love this verse in the Passion Translation. And I feel like it gives us a really good picture of what God wants us to do. It says, don't be pulled in different directions or worried about a thing. It tells us be saturated in prayer throughout each day, offering your faith-filled requests before God with overflowing gratitude. This doesn't mean that we can't be asking God for things, but we got to have faith when we go to God. What does the word say? I believe it's in John. Whatsoever you ask in my name, I will do it. My God. So if you make a request, you got to have faith to know that God is going to do it. We got to believe that God is a rewarder of them who diligently seek him. Woo! Right? So we got to go to God with our faith-filled requests and overflow with gratitude. You got to be thankful even before you see it. God, I thank you. I don't see it, but I thank you in advance. It goes on to say, tell him every detail of your life. Then God's wonderful peace that transcends human understanding will guard your heart and your mind. My God, through Christ Jesus. Sorry, I didn't capture all of that. Y'all, that's where we are. Some of us are in the ark. And we just have to wait. And we have to wait. Alicia said, I would have been done with everybody and everything. Absolutely. Just like Tamika just said, done. I would have been done. Okay, so when we come back, we're going to spend time in our next lesson, which is on Monday. So we got a couple of days of a break. We're going to spend some time seeing what happens when they come off of the ark, and we're going to examine the promise, the covenant that God made. I have a feeling that it's deeper than what we've even been taught, and I think it's going to give us a completely different reverence for God and his covenants that he has specifically made with us. Listen, I love you. Remember, you were created to make God famous. He's anointed you to do hard things. And until I see you, you guys just be blessed in the Lord.